One. And welcome to our next edition of the CBB Review Studio podcast. Dan Siegel here, joined as usual by Matt Mlodzinski and Ariel Puterman. And guys, we have our Final Four field set. It is all one seeds, all chalk. I like it this way. I'll be honest. I wish there were a little bit more first round, second round upsets, maybe a Cinderella story or two. But ultimately, we have the best teams in the Final Four. We're going to have an incredible slate of games. And in my opinion, any set of outcomes is reasonable. So we're going to get to both of the games, Florida versus Auburn at 6:09, Houston versus Duke at 8:49. But first, just a quick word from our sponsor. Matt, take us away.
Are you a high school or college student athlete looking to take your brand to the next level? Want to maximize your potential both on and off the field? Introducing Glory to Glory Sports Agency, where we take our athletes from glory to glory. At Glory to Glory, we specialize in guiding top student athletes like you through the complexities of the new NIL landscape and the transfer portal, ensuring you have the support and resources you need to succeed. Why choose Glory to Glory? Because they believe in more than just athletic prowess. They focus on your academics, personal and spiritual growth, financial and future opportunities. Their team of experts works to craft a personalized plan that aligns with your goals, helping you shine in your sport and beyond. Whether you're looking for guidance on college recruitment, marketing your personal brand, or just need a trusted advisor by your side, Glory to Glory has got you covered. Ready to go from glory to glory. Join the Glory to Glory family today. Visit g2gsa.com or connect with them on Instagram at Glory to Glory Sports Agency to learn more and start your journey to greatness.
All right, we're going to do just quick little team previews before we get to the actual games and the matchups and how these teams stack up against each other. Let's start with our East region winner. So Duke, I'll throw it to Ariel first because you haven't talked yet. So tell us real quick what we need to know about Duke.
Yeah, on paper, definitely the most talented team. I mean, you look at the roster and you got 3 potential top 10 picks here, and Cooper Flagg, who's without a doubt going to be number 1, and then you got Kumon Malawak, who's really upped his draft stock in this tournament with really phenomenal play on both ends of the floor, and then, of course, Concanepple, who's been so good throughout. And that's just 3. They've got so many other talented players on their team. They've got great size, great interior defense. From a skill standpoint, they're definitely the best team, and they haven't really had a challenge yet like some of these other teams have. They've kind of been walking through the competition. You can argue Arizona was a close game, but besides that, they've looked really strong, and they're, I'd say, the team to beat right now.
Yeah, look, when you look at this Final Four that's stacked with one seeds, one seed stands out above the rest, and that is Duke. They've got the probable player of the year in Cooper Flagg, easily the freshman of the year, easily the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. It's all anyone cares about. If you don't watch college basketball from November or even from October like we do, then if you're watching right now, all you care about is Cooper Flagg. So all eyes are going to be on Duke and San Antonio, but you mentioned it. It's not just Cooper Flagg. There are a lot of great players on this Duke roster. They're loaded. A lot of teams loaded in this Final Four. Duke is the most loaded.
And I think the concern surrounding Duke going into the tournament, which I don't think was valid to begin with, but this concern was that they weren't battle tested, right? They didn't have the same level of competition in the ACC as other teams had in the SEC and the Big 12 and the Big 10. But I think even just with their margins of victories and the way they've dominated so far in the NCAA tournament, they've proven that that was a false concern, that the ACC is still some sort of decent level of competition, even if it's not as good as the aforementioned conferences. And I think, yeah, Duke is definitely the team to watch, the team that stands out. Let's move on. Our Midwest region winner, we have Houston, the Cougars out of the Big 12. Just what a program that Kelvin Sampson has built. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'm going to throw it back to Ariel, just a quick little overview. What should we know about the champs out of the Midwest?
Yeah, first of all, Big 12 is king. I've been saying it all along, and SEC, take a back seat until you can win this tournament. But yeah, this Houston team is just so solid throughout. They've been known for their defense forever. They're just, I like to call it a punch in the nose until you tap out. They just keep hitting you and hitting you and hitting you until you're like, I can't take this defense anymore. And we saw it against Tennessee. I mean, I think they had 8 points in the first 15 minutes of that game, and that was an Elite Eight game. What makes them really dangerous this year, though, is the balance on offense. Before, they kind of looked to one guy. It was Jamal Shedd. It was Marcus Sasser. It was Quentin Grimes. Now they've got a bunch of different options. LJ Cryer's been playing unbelievably. Milos Uzan's playing even better. And then you have Emmanuel Sharp, who hit those big threes against Tennessee, just to go along with a couple players. So really strong team on both ends of the floor. they're playing Duke in this game. So you can argue those are the two best teams in the tournament left, and we get a Final Four matchup with that. So you guys can tell me if you feel otherwise, but should be a great game regardless.
I don't know if I feel otherwise. I think the concern for me heading into this game is, I mean, we've all seen the Twitter video, right, of Houston's practices, how intense they are, ball on the ground. It looks like a football practice out there, the way that these guys are going after it. And my concern is the prized possession, Cooper flag. Are the referees going to let it slide when Houston becomes too physical with Duke? Or are they going to call fouls on the Cougars that maybe did not get called in the Big 12, did not get called previously in the NCAA tournament? I think that is a storyline worth following because Houston, they ain't going to back down from anyone, and they're going to force people to get up to their level of physicality. They're going to defend. They're going to make life unenjoyable for any opponent, and that includes an offensive talented team like Duke.
Yeah, and I guess you mentioned that Duke or Houston is 207th in defensive free throw rate, so it's not like they're so good because they don't foul, but their turnover percentage is incredible. Their field goal percentage against is incredible. They are the best defensive team in college basketball per Torvik since 2017 Gonzaga. And they just it's incredible. You guys mentioned it, like Milos Uzan, Jawan Roberts, JoJo Tugler is a guy I feel like needs more love. Just
My favorite
throughout
player.
length, athleticism, they're just so in sync. Their rotations are incredible. If you like defense, sometimes low-scoring games are lack of offense. That is not the case with Houston. They're one of the best defensive teams in the last decade for sure. Next up, our South region winner, the Auburn Tigers. Auburn was easily considered the best team in the country going into about the last week of the regular season. They lost a couple games, still got the number 1 overall seed, and now I think they're really back on track, obviously in the Final Four, but they've just been dominant through the entire season pretty much. Only 4 losses to date. What do we need to know about our Tigers, Ariel?
Yeah, I think they're almost underrated at this point, right? It feels like everyone's counting them out, even though they were the number 1 overall seed, just because of how they ended the season. But like you mentioned, they've been really strong this tournament. Their only real test was Michigan. Then we saw what Tahad Pettiford, the freshman, did. He just took over and did what he's been doing all season long. Janai Broom was a big concern. He got hurt in the Michigan State game, but came back in that game. Sounds like he's going to play. Sounds like he's going to be healthy. When he's on the court, there's not that many people that can beat him just because of how dominant he is on both ends and how he can facilitate that offense and space the floor. This team's fun. They just have a lot of depth. A lot of guys can go off. We've seen Denver Jones have his big game. We've seen Pettiford, like I've talked about. Then we got Dylan Cardwell down low, the captain. And that's not even including Miles Kelly, who's due for that big game where he hit 7 threes, which who knows? Maybe we can see that in their game against Florida. So if you're looking for a nice balanced team, a lot of energy, a lot of chemistry, this Auburn team is special.
Yeah, I mean, you said it right there. Miles Kelly, someone that went off his previous stop at Georgia Tech and is nowhere near the go-to player on this Auburn team. That speaks to the depth. That speaks to what Bruce Pearl has going here. That he can get guys to buy in that were previously putting up 15 or 20 a game at their other stops. And right here at Auburn, not the case. But you know what? If it's their time to shine and if they catch fire, you best believe that they will find a way to get them the ball. That's just the way that Bruce Pearl goes. I will fact check you right there, Dan. 5 losses to date.
Yeah.
I just want to put that out there. But the point still stands, right? It's an Auburn team that rolled through their schedule right until the back end. They've had a couple of late losses, but they still have an incredible record, right? This is still a team that has very few blemishes. And again, reason they're a 1 seed, reason they've made it this far.
I'll mention quickly that they've played all 4 Final Four teams as well this year. Lost to Florida, lost to Duke, but they did beat Houston early in the season.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, I don't know what more there is to say about Auburn if we're trying to keep this brief. But moving on to Florida. Florida is out of the SEC just another team that has even, especially recently, like just been completely dominant. Like you said, they had, I think, a 9 or 10-point victory over Auburn. I think that was early February-ish. So what do we need to know about the Gators?
One name, Walter Kemba Walker Clayton Jr. I feel like he deserves that title. I mean, talk about a guy putting his team on his back. He had 30 in the game against Texas Tech, including some of the craziest threes I've ever seen when they were down late in that game. You saw what he did against UConn as well, who, the two-time national champions. He's been unbelievable this tournament, but he's not the only player on this team. They're super deep. They've got a great bench. They've got a great coach in Todd Golden, and they've been battle tested. They've kind of been in every situation. They've been in a blowout. They've been in a couple close games. They've had to come from behind. So perhaps being in all those different situations will help them more than hurt them when they face this Auburn team on Saturday.
Yeah, I'll be real. Like when you look at these teams, one characteristic of a lot of championship teams nowadays is they bring back returning talent. And I think Florida does it as well as any of these teams in the Final Four. About 60% of their returning minutes and scoring around 55%. But you get the point. This is a team that we saw last year. They brought back pretty much, a lot of the same players. You add the pieces like you need to, but it's a team that we're used to. They're used to each other. They're used to playing with each other. They know their games. And I think that's why we saw this Gators team click in the way that they did. I think there was some hype around them at the beginning of the season. They certainly outperformed the hype compared to the rest of the 3 Final Four teams here. But when you look at it now, a couple months down the road, yeah, this makes sense that Florida is here in the Final Four.
Yeah, and enough attention has been given to their backcourt, but I think a big reason for Florida's success is the fact that their bigs have stayed healthy this year. I mean, the sophomore tandem in Thomas Howe and Alex Condon. Howe had a great game against Texas Tech. I believe he put up 20, splashed 3 or 4 threes in that game. So just they've been looking really good in that front court. Micah Hanlockton was a guy last year. His injury was detrimental to Florida's tournament chances. He actually has not been playing nearly as much in terms of the rotation. Missed a bunch of games this year, but he's back, and that's going to be a key for them as well. So their guards are incredible. Their bigs could rebound. Their bigs could shoot. Like, I don't know. A lot of these teams pretty much just they have it all. They all bring a little bit different things to the table, but overall, like this is a set of 4 teams that any of them could win the tournament, and you wouldn't be surprised. But next storyline I want to talk about, I think we can keep this one brief because there's not much of a debate here. But who is the most important player to watch in the Final Four? We'll start with you, Ariel.
I think there's a little bit of debate. I'm going to go Walter Clayton. I just called him Kemba, and you can't win that national championship if you're UConn without Kemba. And while I think Broome and Flagg are the obvious 2 choices, I think if both of them get hurt, they're obviously worse, but they have the pieces to kind of pick them up and win without them. I think if Walter Clayton doesn't have his best game, I don't see how Florida can win a game. I know that they can have maybe Martin or Richard, or like he did against Texas Tech, they could step up, but they just don't have that it factor that some of these other teams have. So that's why I'm going to go with Walter here.
Interesting pick. I actually also look at Walter as a very important player in here, but I'm going to go with LJ Cryer on Houston. Look, I'm not taking this as a most valuable player because, Dan, I know you're going with it, right? Cooper Flagg is what everyone's looking at when you go into this tournament.
Yeah.
I'm looking at LJ Cryer, and why I say that is because to me there are 3 big names that you look at: Cooper Flagg, Walter Clayton Jr., and Janai Broome. Well, what about Houston? What about the team that has an LJ Cryer who averages about 15 points a game and has literally won a national championship before, right? So I think we need to keep an eye on him, maybe what he does, how he approaches the Final Four in San Antonio, knowing that he as a player has won this before, right? All these staffs have guys that have experience, but it's different when you've got a player that's been here, that's played in front of, unless these teams played against Syracuse, and I know that they didn't this season, this is about 4 times the size of any arena that they've ever been in, that they're going to see in San Antonio. So for Cryer to bring in that experience, I think that's pretty big for Houston, and especially with their matchup against Duke and all the freshmen on the Blue Devils, I think having Cryer can really elevate them.
Yeah. Okay. So if we're looking at it more of like an X factor kind of question, I'm going to look at Duke because what worries me about Houston against Duke is the ball pressure that Houston's going to exhibit. And the thing about Duke is they kind of have a point guard guy by committee. Like Cooper Flagg dribbles the ball up the court. He was a little bit turnover-y. Duke as a team was a little bit turnover-y over the last couple rounds, especially in the second half of that previous game. So I think that is something that worries me. But someone like, I'll go with Tyrese Proctor, veteran guard. Sion James is another guy as well. Just around an abundance of lottery pick freshmen. I think these guys are going to be key in terms of just controlling the pace and being able to defy Houston's ball pressure and limit the turnovers. I think that's the one way that Duke doesn't win this game against Houston. I think 10 to 12 plus turnovers happen in this game. So I'm going to go with that as my X factor. How about underrated? So somebody who is not necessarily on everyone's radar, but you think could make a big impact. Ariel, you alluded to my guy earlier, so I'm going to start. I think it's Miles Kelly for sure on Auburn. I looked at a ranking of the 20 Final Four starters ranked. I think it was Kyle Boone of CBS that put it out, and Miles Kelly was number 14 in that list, which I think is fair. But in addition to being a good defensive player, Kelly, most importantly, like you alluded to, has the ability to go off from the three-point line. And he's shooting around 38% this year on really high volume. The thing is, Miles Kelly has struggled in the tournament other than the Alabama State game. I think he splashed 8 threes in the Alabama State game. So people might not necessarily have been watching that. So they might not necessarily know his name if you kind of are just a March Madness college basketball watcher. But he's had some incredible games this year. To open his Auburn career out of Georgia Tech, he went 7 of 9 off the bench. Then in the previous Duke game, he went 4 of 5 from 3. In a late game against Kentucky, 9 of 14 from 3, had 30 points. This is a guy that if Auburn has some above average, above the norm performance, I think it comes from Miles Kelly, and he could be a guy that goes off and has 25, 27 points and really makes an impact in the Final Four, other than the guys that everyone's kind of talking about and expecting.
Yeah, that was one of my options. I'm going to go with Juwan Roberts here. He might not be the person to watch because he does a little bit of everything. He's not going to be the leading scorer most of the time. He's not going to have that electrifying dunk. He's not going to have that huge block, anything like that. But he's going to do the little things that make his teammates better. If you're a fan of basketball and you're a fan of guys who will do the dirty work and who know what to do in big game situations and are most importantly disciplined in big game situations, Roberts is that guy. And we saw against Gonzaga, easily their toughest matchup. You can say Purdue was also there, but against them, he had 18 points. He had 4 offensive rebounds, 5 assists in that game. And then against Purdue, like we talked about, he had 12 rebounds in that game. So you might not walk out of those games being like this was the main guy and the reason they won, but he absolutely was. And if you just love basketball and you love those kinds of players, then you have to keep an eye on Roberts on the floor there.
Yeah, I looked at a guy Dan already mentioned, that's Sion James at Duke. 7 turnovers in tournament play. That's including March Madness and the ACC tournament. I mean, that's 1 turnover per game. I mean, it just goes to show that he is in control, and he's been in control all season, but especially when it matters most, he's limited them even more. He shot pretty efficient from the field, just under 50%. Look, I'm looking at the Houston defense like I already talked about, and I'm not saying Cooper Flagg or Con Knipple are going to get rattled, but they are freshmen. I don't care how good they are. I don't care how much potential they have. They are freshmen. And Houston will take advantage of people that have not seen their defense or have not seen a defense like that. I think that it's going to be up to Sion James, I'll be honest, to really take control of this Duke team, show his leadership, his experience. It's his 5th season since he started college basketball, so I think it's important for him to kind of elevate that and use that. He doesn't have to go out and drop 20 points, but I think not turning the ball over, leading this team, doing everything he can, not necessarily the dirty work, but the little work to make sure that everyone else on Duke is comfortable when it comes to facing this Houston defense.
All right, guys, let's talk coaches. So we got John Shire from Duke. We got Todd Golden from Florida, Bruce Pearl from Auburn, and Kelvin Sampson from Houston. All these guys, it would be their first championship. So who do you think deserves this championship the most? Like, who do you think is the guy that from an objective, like college basketball fan perspective, you're like, I want this guy to be the one to raise the banner, cut down the nets.
I'll go Bruce Pearl. I think Sampson's the obvious answer, but I think Pearl, and one reason, and Dan's going to hate this reason, but that Virginia game where you were seconds away from making the national championship, a game where you're probably the favorite to win against Texas Tech, and then you have that dumb foul and Kyle Guy sinks all 3 free throws. When you're that close and you don't get it and you get that next chance, you have to take advantage, and he deserves that. He's been a winner. He's won wherever he's gone. Whether that's the D2 level or that's Tennessee, whether that's Auburn. Kelvin Sampson made the Final Four with Houston during that bubble year, but they beat all double-digit seeds. So obviously the regular season is important, and he deserves it for that reason. But just in terms of, having that chance and kind of getting robbed from it, not saying that the call was wrong, but just the situation was unfortunate for him. And now having a chance to redeem it, I think he deserves it for that.
Look, I'm going to go with Kelvin Sampson. I know it's the obvious pick. It's just that he's been a coach for so long. We know that everything he's gone through, both at Indiana, getting this Houston job, how many close calls he's had. And it just seems like he's a guy that deserves a national championship next to his name, right? Like, you look at all 4 of these coaches, I think all of them are going to get their chance. I think that Bruce Pearl is going to be back here the way that he's been elevating this Auburn program. But right now in 2025, I think it's Kelvin Sampson's turn this year. I'd like to see him, if I had to pick one. Think about the storyline too. In San Antonio, 2 to 3 hours down the road, Houston's able to capitalize in their home state for Sampson's first. It's been a long wait for him. I think that'd be awesome. Dan, before I throw it to you, or before you take it from me, I should say, I do want to entertain Jon Scheyer. And I say this because a lot of Duke fans have been weirdly impatient with Scheyer, saying that he can't win the big one. Literally, he got them to the Elite Eight last year. They're in the Final Four this year. I'm not saying he needs it. I'm not saying he deserves it, and I think he'll have many more chances. But it could shut up the critics real quick if Jon Scheyer is able to win one this quick into his coaching career.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Scheyer is I think he's been a better X's and O's, a better coach at maximizing his talent than Coach K in his last couple of years. Not Coach K overall. Coach K is very late Coach K versus very early Jon Scheyer.
I'm clipping this. I'm clipping this and putting it out.
I know you're clipping this, but I don't think it's necessarily a controversial take. Like they run better stuff. They've been maximizing their talent more. Like I know it's not really a fair comparison, or maybe it is because Duke has had incredible lottery pick talent each time. But point is, I still think it's Kelvin Sampson. And Kelvin Sampson, I don't think he's going to get as many opportunities to be back here just because of just sheer age and how that works. So I think he's a lot closer to retirement than Todd Golden, Jon Scheyer at the relative beginnings of their career. So they'll be back. Pearl is a good answer, but Sampson has just been so consistent. Auburn has had their fair share of first weekend heartbreak. Sampson has really been immune to that. I mean, the thing is, Houston has pretty much been a perennial Sweet 16 Elite 8 team. They haven't gotten over that hump, but that hasn't been anything to do with Sampson. It's just, sometimes they haven't had the elite offense to go along with the elite defense. Well, this is, I think, Houston's best team. This is their year. I think it's Sampson. I think it's Houston. I'm rooting for Houston, especially because if we want to cut now into our pick segment,
sure.
In the beginning of the tournament, before the tournament started, I had Houston over Auburn in my finals. That's what I have in all my bracket pools. And that's ultimately what I think I'm going to go with. So I think Houston ends up beating Duke. I think Duke is 5.5-point favorites. They fall. I think the ball pressure might be something that bothers Duke a little bit. And I don't know. I think this is their year. The level of defense that Duke will be facing is something that, they haven't really come close to facing all year. Florida versus Auburn, that's really a pick 'em. Florida's 2.5-point favorites. I'm just going to roll with Auburn. I think they've kind of gotten their swagger back, like you said. Janai Broom should be healthy. I know there's been a couple scares. Maybe he's been a little bit over exaggerating on his end. I mean, if you mouth "I'm done" and then you come back, there's something to be said about that. But I think Auburn beats Florida. I think Houston beats Duke, and then Houston versus Auburn. I think both of them are just like they're. If you want to define like what a championship team looks like, and you're like, oh, you know, you have the 3-and-D wing and the superstar lottery pick, and you know the rebounding and like all these different things, like elite shooting, like both these depth, all these teams have it. Both these teams, I should say. I'm going to stick with my initial pick to go with Houston winning the championship. But honestly, if it is Auburn versus Houston, I would say Auburn would probably be like the way these teams match up. I would go with Auburn. So that's what I have. I have Houston, I have Auburn, and then I have Houston beating Auburn.
Before the season started, my preseason number one and the team I thought that was going to win the national championship wasn't Kansas. It was Houston. That was before I knew Cooper Flagg was that guy. I mean, he's been everything we expected and more, and I just don't see anyone being able to match. I know Houston has a million guys they can throw at him, and I think he'll throw himself right back and just take on each one of them and score and rebound and defend, and he'll just be too much for that Houston team. And even if he can't get it going, Conca is just that quiet, dominant force that, he was huge against Alabama in that Elite Eight game. I mean, they just have too much talent, and I'm worried about Houston being able to get over that hump that we talked about that they haven't been able to before. On the other side, I like Auburn. I agree with you, Dan. I think it's hard to beat a team twice in the same year, especially in a tournament setting. And if Room's healthy, I think they have enough, unless Walter Clayton does another magical 30-piece or something like that. Championship, I'm going to go Duke here. I just think they're too dominant. Shire's been really impressive. I thought he started the season off a little bit questionable with some of his decision-making when they lost to Kansas, Kentucky, but he's really figured it out with this team, especially with a bunch of freshmen. He's really figured out their strengths. So as much as I hate to say it as a Duke hater and someone who, like a lot of people don't like to see the Blue Bloods besides Kansas winning the national championship, especially in a year where there's a lot of really fun stories, Duke's the team to be here, and they're going to win it.
Yeah, I'll be real. I like Duke in their game over Houston. I just think it's going to be a real defensive game, but I think a lot of people are going to look at Houston's defense versus Duke's offense, but I think we also need to look at Duke's defense. There's a chance that they could shut Houston down below 55 points in this game. It all depends what the pace of play ends up being. I wouldn't be surprised if Duke requires Houston to play a little bit faster out of rhythm, but I wouldn't look at what Houston did to Tennessee as something that they will do to Duke, right? Those are two different teams. Duke has guys that can make jump shots, that can create their own shots. Not to say Tennessee doesn't, but it's just a little bit of a different style of play that Duke has, and just NBA players, right? They're going to find a way to put the ball in the basket when it gets down to it. When I'm talking Cooper Flagg, I'm talking Conca Nipple. So I think Duke does win that one. I like Florida over Auburn as well. I mean, just Walter Clayton's too tough to ignore, right? He literally is just too tough of a player. Everything he does is so tough, right? What's that meme? That's Walter Clayton summed up for Florida fans. So I do like a Duke-Florida matchup in the championship game. And, yeah, I'll be real. Duke, after seeing them in Newark and what they did to Arizona, I was only at the Arizona game, and then watching what they did to Alabama on television, they're the team to beat right now. It's without a doubt. I mean, they are just crushing teams. They're putting as many points up as they want. They're slowing games down. They are just controlling basketball games for the full 40 minutes. Duke is my champion. I do have a bonus question. If Auburn wins, who wolfs down a churro in San Antonio first, Charles Barkley or Bruce Pearl?
Man, I don't know, but I think you want to go ahead, Ariel?
Get the hell out of there as soon as he can.
Yeah. I don't know if that's been documented, but it probably has. The Charles Barkley San Antonio. What even happened with him in San Antonio? What did some San Antonio woman do to him? I don't even know. But we'll never know. But yeah, that will do it for today's edition of the CDB Review Studio podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to like this video. It helps us out. Enjoy your Final Four. I think the theme of the episode is that all these teams belong, and both of these games plus the national championship will be very high quality basketball. So that's kind of the byproduct of getting all 1 seeds, even if you're not happy about the lack of Cinderellas. So enjoy the Final Four, get to a Final Four watch party, see Cole Adams there, and we'll be back next week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and take care.